you can't tell your customers that. I mean, maybe you can. I really don't know. Like, would an option have been to say, hey guys, look, I'm in over my head. I'm sorry. Here's a refund for everything that you did that I can't fulfill. He has done that before. You know what's crazy? There's stories where if he can't fulfill an order, a bulk order, you pay $140 per shoe for a bulk order.
Yep.
He'll tell you he can't fulfill it, but kick you back $200 per shoe.
That makes no sense.
Unless it's the ego, unless it's the I'm that guy, right? Yep. So anyway, I know this one is going to be long. I'm going to actually try not to edit it down. For people that are interested, I'll try to create the chapters so they can hop around. This is probably going to be on the longer side, but we're going to include as much as we can just so you can watch, and if you're interested, you can watch it or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
What's up, everyone? I am back, and I've got a special guest. For those who have followed this channel, you know this is my icy hot partner in crime. We have done a lot of shoe-offs together, and my buddy Dennis here, he doesn't know this, or maybe he does now, he probably suspected, but the plug for a lot of our shoe-offs was in fact ZadehKicks.
Is it ZadehKicks?
Zadeh. Does anybody know how to pronounce this guy's name? I thought it was Zadeh, but I thought about it. If a name has a vowel, you have to say the vowel, right? So Zay. It's not Zadeh. Zadeh. That's why I think it's Zadeh.
Could be.
I don't
Who
know.
knows?
I would like to say it right though. I don't want to butcher this guy's name just because he defrauded a lot of people. Because there's other people that have this name, and I want to respect that.
Well, let's get to the meat of it though.
Yeah. All right.
Well, this is nuts, the stuff that you've shared with me so far. So for everybody out there, I was in the game maybe 20 years ago, right? So you see these meths in front of us here. These are one of 12 from, and the box actually has a stamp that says something 05. So like these are from 2005. Since marriage, kids, not really gotten into it. We met, and you've been buying up a lot. So before we get into the kicks and the plug, how did you get into it?
Well, so I think we both have a common problem known as OCD.
Yeah.
O standing for obsessive, C standing for compulsive, and disorder standing for very much that is exactly what happens. And so, I've always liked eclectic things. My big vice was jackets. But, I mean, you kind of put me on the shoes a little bit. In terms of the Zadeh plug, one of my wife's coworkers mentioned in passing that he had purchased something pre-order. And I was like, pre-order? This was probably back in 2020 when it was getting very, very hard to get shoes. Like impossibly hard. Like I used to just get whatever sneakers would give me and I would be happy with it. Like, oh, maybe I'll get 1 in 5 or something and whatever I get is all I need. I don't need to go to the resale market. And I found out about these pre-orders, and it was kind of like you could get any shoe you want for either under retail, which is crazy to me, or for the really hype stuff, slightly over retail, but you have to put your money in probably six to 9 months in advance, and you just wait. And for me, that wasn't a problem at all. I mean, to get the shoes that I wanted, it was absolutely worth it.
Right.
The OCD part of it, though, comes when, you're trying to feel out, is this real? Can this be real? And honestly, I mean, I'm an engineer. I'm financially prudent with most of the things that I'm not passionate about. I mean, I have my vices. I have things I'll just blindly spend money on. Shoes was not it at the start. But when I found out that I could get anything I wanted for damn near retail and it would be worth more after, the logical part of my brain went, this is now a financially prudent. In addition to getting what I want, these shoes are going to be worth more on the back end. Therefore, I should just buy what I want and it'll be okay.
Let's time out there, because I think the audience understands that. That's why we are all in whatever games we are. And something does hold true is during the pandemic, literally, if you collected anything, shoes, watches, they were hard to get. So going back to the genesis of this particular video, your wife's friend told you that that person had a plug, and I know you, and I saw the previous video. So before you went in 25 plus grand, how did he personally get you to test him, and then what happened after that to really start the process?
So in the end, it was about 35 that I was in for, but the reason that I was okay with it, that I got there, is because, as you said, I tested it and I got deliveries on about $10,000 worth of goods. So it wasn't like it was 35 in immediately.
Yep.
It was feel this out, place an order, get a delivery, and the ones that he came through big on, and that just, once I got these, I was kind of like, this guy is legit. 2 pairs of trophy rooms, which were a limited run of 12,000. The entire inventory was basically backdoored by Marcus Jordan. And we actually got an email update from this guy that basically was like, you know, Marcus kind of screwed me on this deal. He took half of my pairs that he had already sold me, and so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fulfill orders. And when I saw that, that actually validated it to me, because in a really messed up kind of way, we all know that backdooring happens. A lot of people were very upset that Marcus backdoored his whole inventory, but the flip side is, if you know he backdoored it, and the person you're doing business with admitted to having backdoored them, you now think that this is a legitimate business, that he's got the plug in place. And I think the rumor was these were sold for about $600 to $700. I heard the price potentially climbed. I think that's what the resale was.
Right.
But I paid, I think, $1,200 for one pair. I think I might have paid, actually, when I went through the spreadsheet, $1,800 for the other. So he had the margins there on his side. He was making money off of these pairs. And they came. And they were legitimate. I mean, I could tell. These are terrible shoes to try to replicate because it's very hard to get the frost correct. I knew as soon as I saw them, these were legit pairs. And I was hooked at that point. I mean, I was like, this guy can come through on the hardest to get shoes.
And what was the time frame before you made your deposit to getting that first pair? And were the trophy rooms the first pair?
The trophy rooms were not the first pair.
Okay.
I think they were the most exclusive pair.
Right.
Probably 10 to 12 weeks after release date. And I think the trophy rooms were maybe a little bit longer, but he came through. The other big one, Union LA Jordan 4s in the topaz color.
Yep.
Which were also Union exclusive, not even released on sneakers. So you have to have a plug to get those shoes, and he got them. And so I think that's the one thing a lot of people keep talking about is, you know, there's been stories of this guy was just buying through StockX. It's like, he's been in business for over 10 years. He was around before StockX was around. He was supplying people off of eBay. When you listen to the Twitter Spaces calls with the real heavy hitters who, you know, aren't coming public but who will speak up on these calls, they openly acknowledge this guy only sold authentic shoes, and he was the plug for major deliveries, major volume for a long time. It was like he was legitimate until he wasn't.
Right.
Now,
so let's kind of get to that, right? So he came through. He came through about 10 grand. So let's multiply that. Let's say there's 100 people. He came through 10 grand, you know, just right there alone's $1 million. My math is right. 100, 10 grand, no? 1,000, 10 grand?
What are we poking at?
So where I'm kind of getting to in this is, when we say he's a plug, right? He came through for you. That is enough to say this guy's legitimate, this guy has access. But you multiply that into a 10-year business, then it puts it into perspective. Like, you can make an argument, this guy is to the backdoor industry as Foot Locker was to Nike or Reebok or Adidas, let's say in the 80s or 90s. That's the magnitude of the access this guy has.
So this is where it gets interesting, and this is part of the analytics that I was poking at. I've got my own kind of personal theory in my head. It's an intuition kind of about what's taken place here. I haven't fully validated this. It's a working theory, or I should say hypothesis, because theories are proven. This guy had a one-up order counter. Like, it makes no sense to me. Usually, you know, if you wanted to obfuscate, and this actually pokes at kind of the legitimacy of him. I mean, if you really wanted to obfuscate what you're doing, you wouldn't make a one-up order counter. Right. So like, if I submitted an order, and sometimes I did this, I would legitimately be trying to buy stuff on his site as fast as I could. We should get to that. But I would buy something, I'd check out, and because I wanted something else, I would immediately do that again, and I would see the order number go up maybe 5 or 8. So he had a one-up order counter. When I started ordering from him, I want to say he was in the 100,000 order range. That was 2020. So I don't know how far back this goes, if it was from day one. Like, if it's 10 years of orders is 100,000 orders. I mean, that kind of makes sense for a business that you could run as like a small entity, right? By the end, I want to say this guy was in like the 220K order range, maybe 250K.
And in 2.5 years.
In 2.5 years, 2 to 2.5 years. And I want to say the last 50, 60, 70,000 orders was just a flurry. So, you know, the argument or the reason that this guy gave for going out of business is he grew the business too large for him to manage. I think that could be very legitimate. Now, the question is, at what point did he decide he was going to cut and run? And did he somehow siphon the money out of the business in doing so?
Yeah.
Those are questions I don't have the answer to. But one thing that I noticed that was odd is around the turn of the year, Christmas, he started doing these sales where it was like, spend $500, spend $1,000, spend $10,000, get this much credit back in gift certificates for his site. And it was tiered, so the more you spend, the more you're getting. And I know for me, all of the pairs I bought were personal pairs. I mean, if you look at my order sheet, it's basically size 11, 11 and a half, and in some cases 4.5 and 5 for my wife. But he would undercut retail pricing for like a Jordan 3, where you're out the door at like 140 shipped. And retail on them is 170, 180, in some cases 200.
Yep.
So you're getting 30% without even having a resale tacked on. It created a market where in this 60, 70,000 orders, he's got individual orders that are bulk orders for tens, hundreds, thousands of pairs under retail.
That's interesting because, so what I'm here, I heard a few things in everything you just said. Number one, you're guaranteed an allocation. Number two, guaranteed an allocation under retail. And yes, you were buying it for yourself, but you could have just as easily been a reseller and not just buy it for yourself. So let's say you bought 3 pairs, that's where you were kind of leading to. You could have bought 30, etc., and then kind of go on from there. So let's just go back to the numbers real quick. So in the 2.5 year span, let's make some assumptions. Assumption number one, it is a one-up counter, right? Assumption number two, we're assuming in 2.5 years, let's just say 120,000 pairs, right? So 120,000 pairs, average $500 a pair, that's a lot of money.
I mean, it is. And I actually think your numbers are probably off and too low.
Okay.
I think the bulk orders accounted for the majority of his business, and I think that they were very significant. And I think that that's kind of bearing out in the secondhand stories that are coming out on the Discord. You know, to get to roughly $21 million off of 390 people. It's mad.
It's really nuts. Yeah.
And actually, it sounds like, you know, anecdotally, you've uncovered some people who I don't even think are part of that Discord, and you're seeing numbers similar.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, I do quite a bit of travel. So when all of this came out, Brian and I chatted, and I went to various sneaker stores across the US just chatting it up with random people. And we've uncovered a lot more, which we'll probably make another episode about that. But I want to get back to the number here, because you bought through a website, or did you? What was that process?
So this is the crazy part. There's a couple things in play, and I think that these two elements really get into how so many people got sucked into this. So there's the culture, first of all, around how hard it is to get some of these shoes. I think that's ground zero. And, you know, this is an element, I'm sure, you know, large corporations are not gonna want me to be poking at this too closely. But to what extent are corporations like Nike culpable if they foster a culture that can turn into this, right? If you intentionally make less supply to artificially increase demand, you open a door for this type of business to thrive. I mean, why does StockX exist? And now Nike's suing StockX. It's all like kind of incestuous and crazy, love-hate, but it almost needs both. It needed the culture around it to be as successful as it is, and now that it's as big as it is, you know, the thing about it is, because it's so hard, this guy was like kind of the emperor, right? The my way or the highway. He ran a very strict business. He was very explicit about how you purchase from him. If you're not on board, don't bother. Like, do not email him for customer service. You know, you're gonna make your purchase and you're gonna wait and you're gonna be happy about it, or you're gonna get all your orders refunded. And that was the crazy bit. If you didn't like one thing, he would be very personable. From my understanding, is basically like, you're not happy with your one order, you get your money back. But guess what? The thousands of dollars of other orders, you're done. I'm refunding it all and I'm cutting you out of my business, which creates a culture of fear. And so nobody wanted to get their money refunded because everything else was worth so much more long term.
You lose the access, basically.
Right. And nobody wants to lose the plug when they believe the plug is the plug.
There's an arbitrary velvet rope, and this one guy either let you in or didn't let you in.
Right. And so for general releases, he would have a website. Now the thing is, people kind of learned. He would have a website where the pricing actually was above retail, but maybe once a month, once every 2 months, he would have a sale. He would tier it, I think, gold, bronze, silver, and gold would give you between 18 and 20% off, silver 34, 36, bronze, or maybe I have that backwards. I have it backwards. So invert it. Bronze 18, silver 34, gold 40. And the gold would work on like Jordan 4s. Silver was rare, bronze was like Jordan 1s, because Jordan 1s are super popular. So you wait for the sale and you get a Jordan 1 for probably about $220. A hype Jordan 1 for about $220. Sometimes for the really hot stuff, the sales would run out of inventory and he would reload it occasionally over the sale period. But for example, Chicago Jordan 1s, the re-release on his site, the first day those went live, they were sold out in, I think, minutes. So you had to get on the sale immediately or you were going to miss out. And that kind of spoke to the legitimacy, like he's managing inventory, right? You would
he's
think.
Not just taking money.
Right. Now, the even crazier bit, and this is the super gamification bit, he would do these bonus emails. And he would literally send an email out and then have his website go live with what felt like one pair of each size of shoe. And the entire world would be competing for it. So if you've ever had to do like a Supreme drop where you're trying to purchase like 7 o'clock on the dot or 8 o'clock on the dot, it was like that, except the time was random. You're getting an email. So now, you know, every waking hour that you're just hanging out, you're kind of like, refresh my phone.
Yep.
Did I get the email? And then as soon as it comes, you're going to the website and you have zero time to think. You're looking at what he has. It's just pictures of the shoes.
Yep.
You're looking at what he has and you're deciding in your head what you want immediately. And it doesn't matter what he's priced it at because you assume it's going to be under the resale value and you're purchasing it
and
immediately as fast as you can. I got really good at it. I mean, like, that's the problem, right? It's OCD. I got really good at it. So in the end, I was able to purchase 4 pairs of Travis Scott Fragment highs and 4 pairs of Travis Scott Fragment lows. And I actually cut myself off after 4 pairs. You'll be proud of me for that. Because I had opportunities to get more and I was like, 4 is it. That's like pot committed. But each pair was probably $1,200 for the highs.
Yep.
And resale, they're going for like $4 grand. So if this guy had actually delivered on these shoes the way he had delivered on the trophy rooms, it would have been a big time payday. But the problem is I would have kept them all.
Yep.
I don't even know if I would have put one on feet. But still, point being, there was a lot of money to be made. And the piece of the puzzle that I don't get is, like, if it got to the point where he couldn't manage it anymore, like the margins weren't there, the dude was undercutting by a mile. Like, he could have raised his prices. He could have not taken orders for inventory that he couldn't fulfill. Mm-hmm. His business would have been just fine. That's the piece of the puzzle that I just don't get.
Makes me wonder, right? So there's a few things out of all of that. In retrospect, when I hear about the sales now, what's going on in my head is, what was his cash flow situation? Did he have a spending problem? And therefore, because when you place an order, until that shoe is delivered, per IRS rules, it's debt on the balance sheet. Once you fulfill the order, you recognize it as revenue. So if he's 3 months out in advance, I'm just gonna keep going with the numbers that I know of, right? The web orders, which are affected by that one counter, assuming $500 a shoe, you just said one that's $1,200, we can make it $1,000, it doesn't matter. At $500, that's $60 million. If he's 3 months out, right? Then you can assume that's 15 to 20 million that's just sitting there, potentially. Then you tack on all of the B2B orders, which are not through the website, that number's even bigger. So if he's doing sales to keep the cash flow coming, to pay the back, like first in, first out type situation, whatever that variance is how much he spent. And as that got bigger, I'm wondering how big did that get to where he has a problem?
So one of the theories or hypotheses that I put out in my first video, just because of the nature of the economy, the abruptness with which the equity market imploded, the crypto markets imploded, it just felt like, I mean, he had a spending problem. He had nice cars, he had nice watches. I think, and I'm sure, you and I with our histories have probably had this feeling, right? Where you've been on top of the world.
Yep.
And then the rug gets pulled out from under you.
Crash.
And you don't see it, and it's not until it happens to you that you're humbled, right?
Yep.
I don't know if he's ever been humbled, but it felt like his business was humming along until it wasn't, and I wonder if it wasn't necessarily a Ponzi scheme, but he thought he could do better, right? I mean, it looked obvious, right? You take this money, you're getting basically a interest-free loan, so go put it in stocks, go put it in crypto, watch it double, triple, and then
Look at the timing of that, right?
it all fits, right? Timeline-wise, it fits with all the markets like just blowing up at the same time.
Which then becomes a securities fraud. You have to put deposit, so at least in the state of California, when you take a deposit, you can't go spend it. So when I think about ZadehKicks, what makes this truly fascinating is, let's think about American culture for a second. We have our heroes, but our heroes today, there's something wrong with them. There's an origin story. Even the villains have an origin story, right? The Joker movie came out during COVID, origin story of what I grew up as, he is a bad guy. There's no rhyme or reason. He's just bad. Every villain now, Doctor Strange came out, Scarlet Witch, origin story. So let's think about Zadeh for a minute here. He started off, I would honestly believe he started off, his value for his business is, I'm gonna give people access to shoes they can't get. I have access, I'm going to let people have access to my access, and hey, it's America. I'm entitled to a profit, and that's okay. But things got out of hand.
So you know what's funny is for all of the pain that I think it's obvious that he's inflicted for people who are financially hurting right now. To me, and this is where the fascination with true crime comes in, is the story, the real story is very rarely ever truly black and white.
Yes.
And you know, I've got an intuition about people in general. A lot of times I tend to come to a conclusion quickly, and then I continually try to validate that. I'm not always right, but I think I would say I'm better than 50-50.
Yeah, that's good.
There was a time where I legitimately emailed this guy just about, I think it was for the Union LA Jordan 4s.
Yep.
I had been trying to get some other shoes and I failed. And he would actually switch up the time sometimes because he felt like his website was getting botted. And he wanted the shoes to go to people that wanted the shoes, not just bots.
Right.
He would convey this in the emails. And he switched the time up and I snagged this pair and I just emailed him and said, you know, thanks, it's been real hard trying, but I finally got one and it's really awesome of you. He replied back and he basically was like, thank you, you know, that means so much to me, that's why I do this. And so I think you're right. I really think that that was the driving factor for why he started the business, and I don't think it was just about the money, even though I'm sure he made a lot of money. I think for him, it's being that guy, right? Yep. And I know you know a lot of people where it's not just about the money, it's about being that guy.
It's why we have Instagram today, to be honest. It's everybody wants to be that guy, that girl, or whatever it is. There's just this perceived self-worth, who knows?
So
there is something to say. There is absolutely something to say in that. It does feel good to help people out. And for those who don't know me, before I met my wife, Stacy, I was always trying to please people. Can't even get into my psyche for why and all of that stuff. And, you know, now we're in our 40s, so it's like, okay, you know what? Who cares? But for that crowd...
Did you just throw me into the 40 bin?
I'm sorry.
Let's take that back. Run that back, but all right, you can keep going.
So where I was going with that is, he ran a business and he was truly providing value. Now let's get this straight. No one creates this giant, the even potential for this giant issue or whatever's going on right now, this scandal, we can call it a scandal, without having a legitimate business and providing some legitimate value first.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't grow to this scale
exactly
as a fraud from the beginning. There's no way.
Yep. So we can fault him for not managing business per se, but I think he did start this with the right intentions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So when we look at that, that's Zadeh by no means is a victim, and I'm not trying to paint him as one, but I am trying to understand, you know, just kind of in that fascination, what drove him to continue on, right? Was his spending bad and he just couldn't give it up, or was his ego? Like we have or had friends who just couldn't check their ego, and sooner or later they get cut off. It could be the same thing here. In this particular case, I wonder if his competitors kind of caught wind and started nickel and diming him.
So that is a hypothesis that I've read a number of times and I buy into, which is you know, people speculated about what his plug was, and I think an element that might have some truth is that he's got suppliers in Europe potentially, because these shoes don't just release in America, they release around the world. And I imagine in other countries, perhaps in Europe, the inventory and supply chain controls are less strict, where I think a rumor is that he would be plugged with a lot of individual stores in foreign countries, and maybe he had deals to buy some of their other inventory in exchange for guaranteed access to the more hype releases. It would fit with the timelines of shoes being 10 to 12 weeks delayed, right? If he has to source them from all around the world. And it would make sense that he would be able to run the business with the margins that he's got if that is in fact his plug. Now think about what happened to the resale market during this window. These shoes went from being kind of a fringe, yeah, they're more expensive, they're harder to get, to being legitimately very, very valuable. Now, if you run a mom and pop shop that just got hit with the pandemic, and you know you have a guaranteed supply of basically money coming in via these shoes, are you gonna give them to the plug for essentially pennies on the dollar versus what you could get in the real market? It's very possible.
You could do anything, yeah.
It's very possible that his individual bits of his own supply chain got cut off, but here's the problem. You can't tell your customers that. I mean, maybe you can. I really don't know. Like, would an option have been to say, hey guys, look, I'm in over my head. I'm sorry. Here's a refund for everything that you did that I can't fulfill. He has done that before. You know what's crazy? There's stories where if he can't fulfill an order, a bulk order, you pay $140 per shoe for a bulk order.
Yep.
He'll tell you he can't fulfill it, but kick you back $200 per shoe.
That makes no sense.
Unless it's the ego. Unless it's the I'm that guy, right?
Yep.
I'm running this business so well that you can trust me, and here's a wire for your money back plus interest. It's mad in the context of what's happened, but it builds the trust in his business if you're doing that.
But that also tells you how good his business was, that he could afford to do that as well. Because when I see that, I mean, as a small business owner, I don't see that as some people who I would say probably are a little bit cynical would say he did that specifically to build trust to do the scandal. I think the business was growing at a rapid pace that he couldn't control it. So he did that more as a bonus because things were going that well. So when that happened, he must have been in the hundreds of millions already in top line revenue.
I think you're right. And I think, the scary part about this business is if your margins are fine, and I'm sure they got finer, especially if the supply chain got cut off for him. If you're not really watching the numbers, you can easily let it get over your head.
Yeah.
Now, there's been rumors that he actually has been selling some of his cars. And what I'm wondering is is he at least trying to go about this the right way? In fact, someone commented on my Instagram. I have no idea how much truth there is to this.
I would say by now everything is seized and frozen. So I don't think it's up to him and whether or not they were registered to his name or not.
Let me read you this comment. And you can tell me if you know what you think it means. It says, went by there last week and Michael and Bethany were gone and employees still doing orders. Definitely under some protection. I mean, I think this is implying that the feds have him. Maybe he's being a cooperating witness? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure he knows all of the dirty secrets of this industry.
Right.
But who else is there to throw under the bus?
Well, I think first they're trying to, so my guess on that, and I'm not an attorney, this is not legal advice, but my guess on that is even under bankruptcy protection, the whole purpose of bankruptcy protection is to negotiate the debt such that the business can continue. Actually, there's two types, right? There's 7 and 13. One is goodbye. One is restructure and try to get out of it.
So the way that this one is structured by the reading on the site the first day is very clearly his attempt is to kind of detach himself from the business entirely, but protect his personal assets. So it basically is the LLC has this, has the LLC assets, and we've got a receiver who is going to liquidate the assets and attempt to pay off the obligations of which we know, the assets are not going to completely fulfill.
Right.
But that's independent from his personal stuff. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I think there's a federal investigation, is because, first of all, he was accepting wires, direct wires for inventory. That's how you did the bulk orders.
Yep.
And, it's very easy to take a wire and push it to your own personal account versus have it end up in an LLC account.
Yep.
And, what's the number one thing the feds love to nail you on? Wire fraud.
Yep.
So, more likely than not, I have a feeling there's going to be a smoking gun for them to uncover there. It would be very impressive if, in fact, he was smart about leaving all the assets in the company, admitting he's over his head, and just walking away and kind of letting them figure it out. It's not feeling good. It's not feeling good for that.
I imagine the feds are trying to operate the business to do a proper calculation of the assets or not. First and foremost, and if this is happening, great. Trying to fulfill what orders can come in or whatnot. Whoever's handling the bankruptcy is probably chasing at least documented vendors to kind of do the same. And then we'll kind of see where things lie. I'm with you though that I don't believe there's not a smoking gun. There's definitely smoke. There's room for smoke. It actually reminds me, and I'm going to pivot just for a second here. Do you remember, I want to say this was 2019, Porsche GT3 or RS allocations out of some dealership in Miami. I believe it was Championship dealership, where you had a legitimate dealership. If it wasn't Champion, I want to say it was Champion Motorsports, legitimate dealership, but you had an employee of the dealership. So the dealership did nothing wrong. You had an employee who went out and took deposits to a separate bank account promising allocations. And the dealerships had no idea this was going on. So I'm also wondering how much of the smoking gun is him, or could there be other people as well?
It's a good question. So the thing that's validating about the Instagram post, talking about employees still fulfilling orders, is an order showed up at my doorstep after all of this had transpired.
When you made your video.
Right, the second one.
Right.
And the timing of it all really does suggest that he was probably out the door.
Yep.
And the employees were still trying to do right by the customers. To what extent did they know? Were they completely left out in the cold? These are all the things that, in terms of being able to tell this story, I don't know how close we're going to be able to get to ground truth.
Yeah.
But I think the more that we put out in the world, and the more that we ask, and the more that we talk to, the more that the truth is going to come to light.
I may be sick, but this is absolutely fascinating to me. Now, I feel for the victims in this, the people who have lost out their hard-earned cash. You believe in a plug, and it's happened to all of us. It's happened to all of us. It hasn't happened to me at this scale, but plugs are plugs, and they're there for that reason, because we don't have access. It's almost no different from tipping the maitre d' so I don't have to wait in line to get a seat. There's no guarantee.
Wait, I want to hear. I don't remember. Well, so first of all, I want to point out, because, I got a lot of nice shoes, but when you think sneaker OG, you're a sneaker OG. So it's like, how this game operates and has operated for a long time. And I don't know, definitely for, the new people that are just put onto this channel, they don't appreciate, we did a full up run of your entire sneaker collection, of which I would say these are the crowning jewel. Would you agree?
They're my favorite, and they're probably the most rare.
So first of all, like, if you want to see an amazing sneaker collection, go back and watch those videos. They did not get the viewership that they deserved.
It's fine. They're okay.
Well, the shoes,
I love them.
no, not us. Like, the videos are crap.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing. We were just like...
Every shoe in that video had a second pair that I sold, and that's what I used for my deposit on my first house.
So, this shoe, being rare, being your favorite, the game was different back then. How did you get this shoe?
Not giving up sources even to this day, but I will say this for all the viewers out there. It was a lot different back then because I would say the hype around it was regional, right? So we're in the Bay Area. We have True, we have Huff, we have a few other places. And when you wanted dunks back in those days in SBs, you had lines for Jordans, Jordan 13s, the Altitudes, those black and green ones. I slept in the car while my nephew on Haight Street stayed outside. And then we got a pair. But with a lot of these, with the SBs, they weren't global like they were today. So you could argue everything was backdoor even for us back then. And we had the connections. I would say that hasn't changed, but the magnitude and the numbers and the dollar amounts, that by far is different. I think that kind of goes into everything these days.
Did you have to physically go somewhere to get these shoes?
No, I had to make a phone call.
Okay, all right. So it wasn't too much different. I mean, it was. I'm sure in general it was, because you told me you had to travel to a lot of places to get like the LeBrons.
Yeah, travel to Asia and all of that. So these were Singapore. I will say that. So I did pick them up in person.
Holy crap.
But I didn't pay for that trip. Someone else paid for that trip, so it was worth it.
Nice.
But I want to say even at MSR, so just so I was saying the numbers and magnitude, right? I think these at retail, I should probably look up if I have the receipt. I want to say they were over 1,000. You know what? Let me just look it up.
Holy crap. I mean, it's worth it.
This is 2005, right?
No, I mean, this is an absolutely incredible shoe.
Was there Gmail in 2005? Because if there was not Gmail, I don't think I'd have the receipt.
It's all right. They didn't put it in the box, huh?
No, you know what? Check.
You got a postcard.
Yep, these are legit.
You got a dead spider.
Do I really?
Yeah.
No, these are tight. But with this, I think we should continue the conversation. I know I'm going to continue to talk to a lot of people as I continue my travels this summer. And we'll get a bunch of footage, and we'd love to share it with everybody here. To me, this is absolutely fascinating, and I want to dig deeper. I'd say we owe it. I mean, okay, number one. Owe it to the victims to try to help out however we can. Justify whatever is going on is not easy. Any way we can help there. At the same time, with our Dateline True Crime Fascination, I want to dig on this origin story.
So, one thing I will say, I started a Gmail account, ZadehStoleOurKicks at gmail.com.
Yep.
And I've gotten some emails, and some of them I need to reply back. So if you've emailed me, I want you to know, I haven't replied yet, but I am seeing them, and I appreciate you sending them. Some of them are honestly gut-wrenching. Like the stories that are being told with the money loss and the impact it's having financially.
Yeah.
I actually do want to share some of these because I think getting that side of the story out, the real story behind what the victims of this are facing. I mean, for me, 25,000, I thought it was a lot. It is not a lot compared to the losses some people are seeing and what that means to the impact to their daily life from here going forward.
Right.
I need to reach back out to these people and ask if they're willing to let me share their story. I'm keeping everything private unless I get explicit permission. But along those lines, if there's anybody watching that wants to be interviewed in a similar fashion to this, wants to explain how they got sucked into this world and ended up where they ended up, I think we definitely are open to having those conversations as well, right? So,
and cannot let one guy ruin the culture.
It won't.
The sneaker culture, the collection culture, but it does lay an interesting light on it. But let's hold on before you wrap up, because I want to pull on that thread.
Yep. And this circles back to the real story behind something is often shades of gray.
Yes.
I'm gonna pull in a bit of Mariana Van Zeller.
Okay.
And the Amazon. A recent episode of Trafficked I watched talked about the burning of the Amazon rainforest and why it's happening. And you must have heard, because in the Bay Area, right, it's like, stop burning the Amazon, right? Let's protest the burning of the Amazon. First of all, what are you realistically gonna do? But in order to do something, fundamentally, you have to understand the problem, the players, their motivations, and how it all interconnects. And what was fascinating to me is, we're here in our ivory towers of the Bay Area, so to speak, and we're judging a third world country for burning down its rainforest because we feel like it's the Earth's lungs. When you watch this episode, one of the most interesting quotes out of this, when they were interviewing someone who was cutting down the Amazon rainforest, was like, people around the world say we're killing the Amazon, but you don't understand, if we don't do this, we're gonna be dead. We're not gonna be able to provide for our family.
Yep.
So, would you rather have the tree live, or we as humans live? It's crazy to think about, right? Because I guarantee you, anyone here in the Bay Area going, why are you cutting down the Amazon? Why are you killing the Amazon? Is not thinking, why are we advocating for killing the people in the Amazon, right? But what are their motivations? There's lumber. Well, who's buying the lumber? I need to build a house. You need to build a house. Where's the lumber come from? Do you not have Amazonian lumber? Right? It's a supply chain issue. Once they cut down the trees, what do they do next? They mine for gold. What are they sourcing gold for?
Not for
Guess
themselves.
what? Guess what? Apple, which is headquartered $3 trillion company just down the street from my house, needs gold for every single phone that they make.
Yep.
Are they strictly controlling their supply chain? Or are they turning a blind eye to it? That's the demand. That's the demand and the money side of the equation that's fueling this. And so, if they're not making sure that no Amazonian gold is entering the supply chain and making it into their chips, they're complicit in what's happening here.
Right.
And I think if we really examine this story and all the elements, we're gonna see a big picture that isn't quite obvious from the outset when you first see this problem. And I think part of this, not to relate it to just being a terrible story, is like, there are great things that can come to light in terms of the culture and why we do what we do. And I think there's a good story to be told in the havoc and chaos that is dealing with the fallout of this scandal.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I absolutely don't disagree. And the only reason I'm not going to say I agree is I don't want to make any assumptions, and I want to go down this process. I say, let's go down this process with an open mind. From where I'm sitting right now, all I can think about are the victims and the hundreds of millions of out there. So in that light, bad guy. At the same time, same with what you were just talking about, the Amazon. Is this a villain story, or is this more of an origin story, and it turns out just to be this giant tragedy, and he's a victim just like all of his victims in a way? Who knows?
it's an interesting question, right? So in the same way that he was the supplier for a lot of lower level resale shops, and that's absolutely come to light. I mean, I think I can state that as a fact. I don't know the scale with which that's happened, but that has absolutely happened.
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten people who have reached out to me directly and said they've lost 6 figures running a resale store.
Yep.
But did it go both ways? Was he supplied by a similar number of smaller mom and pop shops that all cut him off, which cut, you know, the big faucet at the top off, and now all the lower level guys are going to get hit? We don't know.
Exactly.
But it's possible.
Yeah. It happens to me all the time. I get called for various hookups, and people have made promises to me, and then when I call in those promises, I get ghosted. And there's a ripple effect. I have to make the phone call and say, hey, sorry, I couldn't come through. So, I mean, this is not $100 million business for me, so it's like the phone calls are easy.
Right.
And I'm not taking money on anything I'm hooking people up on. So, yeah, this will be interesting. And if you guys have thoughts, please, like, what's the email again?
Zadeh. I'll just throw it on the bottom of the screen, but ZadehStoleOurKicks @gmail.com.
I want to hear your story.
All right, man, I don't know how long this video is. You know, it is a Ask Me Anything. I think part of the reason we're test running this is, you know, you've got some people lined up that you're going to talk to.
Yep.
And in general, if there's anybody that's out there that wants to tell their story and has a compelling story, we're open to doing this exact same sort of thing with you, potentially in person or over Zoom, or
either one.
Or we can just email you. Actually, this was a thought, brainstorming. One idea that I had is we put out basically a casting call. We make a list of questions and we have people just record their own responses. And the problem is, for video, I don't know how we share it easy. I mean, there's Instagram stories or reels. They're kind of shorter in nature and harder to aggregate. I don't know how we actually push like video content around. That's kind of where, if you're interested, you know, reach out. But if there were just questions you wanted to answer on your own time in a video, you could record them, and if you can find a way to get them to us, then we could share those as well.
Or if you have a question that you want us to ask and try to source an answer for, let us know.
Yeah. So anyway, I know this one is going to be long. I'm going to actually try not to edit it down. For people that are interested, I'll try to create the chapters so they can hop around. This is probably going to be on the longer side, but we're going to include as much as we can just so you can watch, and if you're interested, you can watch it or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Closing thoughts? This is the sacrifice we're making. We're in the Bay Area. We are Golden State Warriors fans, and we're 50 minutes behind on the game to tip-off. So I think it's time to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Was there really a dead spider?